minutes after midnight, right here on Community Radio. This is the Paragon Radio program. We are the slime. I'm Benjamin. It's the fund drive. It's the time to raise funds for Community Radio. Go to kkfi.org. Make a secure online donation at kkfi.org. You do not need to pledge all of your money, but we do need some of your support. Community Radio would not be here without you. If you think this show is cool, if you think the things that we talk about on the show are important, if you think that the things that are discussed on KKFI are important, if you think the music that is played on this radio station that is literally not heard anywhere else, if any of that is valuable and or important to you, kkfi.org. Make that secure online donation right now, because it is that time of the year, just a few times of the year, that KKFI comes and asks you for some of your money. KKFI, it is the spring 2022. We can't believe we made it this long. I'm making that up. We can believe. We can. Not KKFI. We can believe KKFI has made it this long. We can't believe humanity has survived up until this point. That's what blows me away, is that humanity is here in 2022. So we're going to discuss things tonight. We'll take your phone calls tonight. We'll have a conversation. And we'll raise some money for community radio, because it's incredibly important. If you value analog information, and we live in the era of digital everything, this right now, this program you are listening to right now is about as analog as it gets. Because we're going to use telephones. We're going to use radio signals. We're going to use frequencies, man. And I guess technically some of them are probably digital, but for our purposes, we'll pretend like we have big old, floaty, smooth waveforms for you this evening. For you this evening here on Community Radio. There's a lot of things to talk about. I guess the things to talk about, mostly, if you wanted to talk about current affairs, we need to talk about mass shootings, because that is all that's taken place. It's the only thing that's happened in America. We went from a pandemic to supporting Ukrainian freedom to mass shootings. Maybe the mass shootings were always there. Maybe that's possible. And of course, violence hits here close to home, because Kansas City is a violent place. And this whole last week, there was a story about an unarmed woman who was pregnant, who was shot 5 times by the police. But it turned out she was armed. Turned out she wasn't pregnant. Turned out she did get charged with carjacking. It's a funny time. It's a funny time. Are we supposed to ask the carjackers how they feel? Should we check in with the carjackers and see how they're doing, and make sure that we don't, somebody doesn't get abused, right? I mean, carjackers have feelings too, right? If you're part of an armed carjacking crew, or maybe if you're just an independent armed carjacker, you have feelings. Maybe you don't deserve to get shot by the police 3 or 4 times. Maybe that's true. It's amazing how social media has infected the mind of the modern man and the modern woman. We can talk about those things tonight. We can take your phone calls. We also have a guest in the studio, which I don't know. We never really have guests in the studio, but there is a guest here, and it may be pertinent to what we're talking about, because Bill Douglas is here. Bill, can you say hi to the people?
Hello, and I feel very special being the first one, maybe.
Well, not the first one, but it's been a while. It's been a while. I think it's been a number of years, but that's okay. A lot of people don't like coming down here in the middle of the night, which maybe you can understand.
I'm a night owl, yeah. So
are you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Bill Douglas is here. What's the name of your organization, Bill?
The Global Transformation Project.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's what we think.
Because the globe is transforming whether you want it to or not.
Right. Yeah, and in fact, we're forming it with our consciousness. There was a major study that involved thousands of people, and what they found was the biggest determinant of their future well-being was their vision of the future. And so we're actually creating...
Mind is the builder.
Yeah, everything starts in the human mind.
Yeah, and it's not like there's just an organic process going on. I mean, there's people who have elite power and control who would like to shape consciousness for their own purposes and their own goals, right?
Yeah, well, that's happening constantly with media and, public, the way that we're educated.
And that's not new either. I'm sure that's been going on since the first priest came up with the first secret ritual
I think it's
on
always,
top of a pyramid thousands of years ago.
Yeah, I think it's always becoming more and more highly refined. And the intensity of media propaganda has just amped up magnificently over the last couple of years at least. It's
become more divisive than I've ever noticed in my life.
Yeah, and mainstream media is losing viewership. People are just fed up with it. There's no solutions. It's all finger pointing.
Well, that's interesting because, I met you, we were at a comedy show, which wasn't a normal comedy show. I wouldn't say that Jimmy Dore is a normal comedian. I mean, he's a stand-up. He's got that nightclub comedian thing going, but he's also creating a bit of a consciousness or awareness around him because of his messaging.
Yeah. And all he does is just point out the obvious. He's just a blue-collar guy who just sees through, the BS. And, he just points out things like, you can't really...
But that was an interesting grouping of people, I thought, at that comedy show. It was up in the Northland somewhere, but it had distinct Ron Paul 2008 vibes to me.
I actually caucused for Ron Paul. It was the only Republican...
See, this is what I'm saying.
It was the only Republican campaign.
I didn't caucus for him, but I did do a lot of volunteering back in 2008. So that's my estimation there is completely correct. It did have very strong Ron Paul 2008 vibes.
Well, I think people just float towards truth, and that's what I do. It's like Rand Paul will say a lot of things that I think are right on the money, and then he'll say a lot of things that I think are way off.
He ain't his poppy.
Yeah,
Rand is not Ron. That's for
true.
sure.
But
But what was the big part about Ron Paul that was attractive to you?
Well, it was ending the global military.
There you go.
Intelligence.
And what's Jimmy Dore's message?
It's the same thing. It's real common sense stuff. It's like, why are we sending $40 billion to the Ukraine? And we know that the Ukraine can't defeat the Russians. It's just militarily impossible. And so really it just puts the Ukrainians in this horrible situation where Washington's telling them, go fight, go fight, go fight. And now I just heard today that Biden said, now it's time for the Ukrainians to talk about, ceding some territory to the Russians. Well, why didn't we do that before all these thousands of Ukrainians died? Why did Washington push the Ukraine?
Washington doesn't care about the individual lives. Obviously, it's about stimulating defense contracting. We're having a conversation right now in this country about how you don't need a gun to protect yourself, but Ukraine needs $40 billion worth of guns to protect itself.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue.
Against a tyrannical government, right? Yeah. Ukraine needs weaponry to protect itself from the tyrannical Russian government, but the American people need weapons to protect themselves from that's the dark side of things. Nobody likes to think about violence, or at least I don't, on that level. But at the same time, we come down to very basic concepts. What is government? What is society? What are we surrounded by in this life? And we're watching in a real way a transition to a new world that I don't think I would have been. I think I anticipated decades ago when George W. Bush was president and you had Darth Cheney running the show, and you're like, they're going to suspend the election, they're going to suspend habeas corpus, they're going to suspend the Constitution, they're going to start feeding our children to demonic, multi-dimensional forces.
Right.
Some of those things may have been true.
Well, what I've been an activist for 40 years, and I've felt like a ping pong ball, kind of being popped from one place to another, by the way the media goes or the government goes or whatever. And the evolution that I had was I started to realize that, the only thing that we can do is that we can start focusing on solutions. And I'm really disappointed with Bernie right now.
Sure.
But when Bernie came along and he started pointing out that we could save $300 billion a year with Medicare for all, and that we could, the research that I've done personally as well, but it was like, we start to realize that if we focus on what's possible and that it just makes such absolute sense, and don't get involved in the tit for tat, MSNBC, Fox News, all that stuff that they, it's all distraction. It's all, if you watch Fox, you think all your neighbors are communists. If you watch MSNBC, you think all your neighbors are Nazis.
Right.
You know what I mean? You get all that stuff going. So it just got me to just focus on, just what are the solutions? And so that's what I'm always looking for. So that's what brought me to Ron Paul, because he had a solution, that's in this big, military, industrial, machine that is it's actually consuming about 64 cents on every U.S. dollar if you figure in taking care of the veterans and
Sure.
also militarized police.
But people if you end the military-industrial complex, then America will be vulnerable and unsafe, and the world will have an imbalance of power and all these other things.
Well, it'd take the Russians and the Chinese a long time to catch up with where we are, because we got so many more weapons than they do. But it's like I'm just looking for solutions. And, earlier you're talking about the mass shootings, and Joe Rogan, took some heat because he said that it was a mental health issue. And I absolutely agree with him.
If you murder somebody, you have mental health issues.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're
a murderer,
if
you're not defending yourself against a psychopath,
yeah, that's right.
You may be the psychopath.
Yeah. If you pack on a backpack with lots of extra ammo and you bring in an AK-47 and you go walk into a school, then you've probably got some emotional issues. But the thing is that there's a way to solve this, and that's what the global transformation project that we're involved in, that I was mentioned earlier, is about. And what we're pushing for is a United Nations resolution. It would be non-binding. No country, no school, and no student would have to participate in it. But what we want to do is we want to expose the world and public educators worldwide through a UN resolution to the science on mind-body practices for public education. And anybody who's listening, if you hang on and listen to this program, I've got some science that is just going to alter the way that you view reality in some profound ways. But one of the things that happens when people practice, what are mind-body practices? Well, the big five that have the massive science behind them are meditation, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, and mindfulness. And what they all do is they bring the brain waves into the alpha theta state. That's the meditative state. And the effects this has on the health of the body and the DNA expression and just all kinds of aspects of our being and consciousness are really profound. But one of the things that they found is that when people practice regular meditation, it actually shrinks the stress and fear part of their brain, and it increases the size of the empathy and compassion parts of their brain. And so what you see in schools that employ mind-body practices, because some schools have already done it, is you see a dramatic reduction in bullying rates. And what got me thinking down these lines was I did a presentation at Folsom Prison many years ago, and they brought me in to teach meditation and Tai Chi to the inmates, and I didn't realize it at the time, but they had a program there for 2 years, a meditation program, a Tai Chi Chuan program, and they not only had they brought down the violent incident rates for the participants in the group, but there was a reduction in violent incident rates for the whole prison. And the whole prison wasn't participating in this mind-body practice. And then other prisons, like Apodaca Prison in Mexico, they had a horrifically historic violent incident at their prison, and then they just taught the whole prison how to meditate, and they haven't had a major violent incident from it since then. And so if we were teaching these mind-body practices in public education in age-appropriate ways from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade, what we're suggesting is 1 hour a day, so it'd be kind of like a mind-body health science PE course, because Tai Chi and yoga give you all the benefits of exercise, but you'd be getting the mind-body benefits as well, so you'd be increasing your empathy and compassion part of your brain. And so just a little change in the brain waves And these effects last. So it doesn't just make you less violent or kinder when you're doing the meditation, but it actually starts to change your brain, like I said. And so these students would have changed brains. They would have more socially functional brains and more compassionate and empathetic brains, more normal brains, really, because when you get into the science, compassion is a normal state for human beings. You see that in the science. And so, we could be imparting these ancient, time-tested, and science-proven technologies, mental technologies, to students all over the planet, and it wouldn't cost very much. And, just a little change in these students' brains would make the difference between them deciding when they get up in the morning if they're going to go out and, have some fun with their friends, or whether they're going to pack a backpack full of extra ammo and go blow up a school. It only takes a tiny little change in consciousness to make that change. So we could dramatically reduce these kind of things.
So the solution is within you.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the problems of our world, the society we live in. The solutions are spiritual.
Well, they're scientific. It's consciousness science, because the verbiage is really important, because we're going to get this into public schools, and so we have to make sure that we use the proper description, because the way that I approach it is from just a science-based. Now, I've studied mind.
You don't want to muddy it with it having like a religious overtone, is that?
Yes, that's correct, and it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to, because there's mind-body practices that are taught that aren't taught in a religious way, and they have that effect. They have that effect
Sure.
on people. Yeah. So, but yeah, to be honest with you, if we were teaching public school kids all over the planet how to do mind-body practices, the science would show, all kinds of myriad benefits that would save society trillions of dollars year after year. But, if you wanted to use other verbiage, really what it would be, it would be a mass global spiritual awakening. Because some of the science, I mentioned that when I was at Folsom Prison.
Won't that be bad for business, though?
Yeah, that might. The businesses.
Yeah.
It'd be really good for Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga and meditation teachers.
Sure, herbal teas would go up. Yeah, but right. As far as...
People would probably start eating more organic food.
Yeah, javelin missiles, though. That might not sell as well.
That's true. They might not. And also Madison Avenue, they might not do quite as well, because people would be attracted to things that are...
Yeah, people didn't need to consume to fill the void, the hole inside of their soul. Yeah, that might be bad for business, too. Well, if people realize that they're actually complete... Yeah. And that they've been lied to, and that everything they need is within inside of them, and they just need to acknowledge that and embrace that.
Yeah, that's actually one thing that I wanted to mention earlier when you were talking about kind of the state that we're in. I have a sense of kind of a larger picture, maybe because I'm like 65 years old or whatever, but it's like, I've seen so many waves of how things go socially and globally and everything. And, I really think all the things that we're going through are part of a mass global awakening. I think people have to get to the point where they realize that they can't put all their faith in Sean Hannity or Rachel Maddow or Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden or, you can just go on down the list. What people are starting to realize is the only thing that really matters is truth and compassion. Because that's how we're wired. It's from our DNA. There's research that shows our DNA is just naturally wired for compassion. And so I think that people are kind of, what's happening with all, the shrillness of media and propaganda and all these things, is that people are being awoken, masses of people, all over the planet. And they're just starting to realize that the only thing that really matters is, them and their neighbors and how well people that they know are doing. And, it's like all the, it's like, like I said, I've been an activist for 40 years. And, looking back now, I realized I was manipulated. I was manipulated by media to be, to just think the worst about people. Mm-hmm. Like I have a son-in-law who's a Republican. And, and I had a lot of prejudices against him. At first, it's like I tried to override it, but it's like they were there. And, just over the last couple of years, the way I've seen the way that the media manipulates and, makes us divided from one another, it's like I got to know him on a better level because I realized that he's not the boogeyman, that I had been sold, for so many years, and I bought into. And so I think, that's, people are starting to wake up to the fact that their neighbors aren't dangerous. If you watch Fox, or if you watch Fox, you're starting to awaken to the fact that your neighbors aren't communists, and if you watch MSNBC, you start to wake up to the fact that your neighbors aren't Nazis.
Maybe, but some people really feed into that paranoia. Some people think that the reason why, the people that went to the Capitol on January 6th, or people that voted for, Joe Biden are the worst people in the world, and how can we live with these people? I mean, the prejudices that have been plugged in for people so they can focus in on those and find something to be upset with. It's pretty amazing, and that's like the opposite of that consciousness that you're talking about. It's the manipulation of that same global awareness, right? But it's through social media. It's through it's through a middleman. It's through some sort of artificial construct that is clearly manipulated. Because even though we're compassionate people, and that's probably what we default to, we also are incredibly tribalistic, and we love to blame people. We love to find our Judas goat.
Well, that's how propaganda works. It plays on our natural, weaknesses.
Sure.
Tries to
natural biases against people that we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. That's correct. Yeah, but it's just, I think people are just, they're just seeing that the media is not really telling the true story, and it doesn't matter whether it's left or right or whatever. I'm talking about corporate.
Oh, sure. The corporate media, what used to be called the mainstream media, but can't be called the mainstream media anymore because it doesn't have the same pull that people, not this program, but people that have developed shows on the internet. From Joe Rogan to Jimmy Dore, these others that have a much larger audience than CNN. They said that when CNN lost the contracts to be in a bunch of airports throughout America, their viewership went down by half, because most of CNN's viewership at this point was people waiting for an airplane.
Yeah, that was when I watched CNN.
Right.
When I was waiting for an airplane. Yeah.
So those old narrative generators, corporate press, are dying. People aren't listening to them anymore.
See,
They're not focused on them anymore.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's an awakening going on. And, like Gil Scott-Heron said, the revolution is not going to be televised. And so all this is happening, through the...
Which fits into the whole idea of consciousness and, in the internal. What did Gil mean when he said that? It's like, when the revolution happens, they're not going to be talking about it on TV. They're going to be trying to avoid it on TV.
Right, or demonize anybody who's a part of it. Yeah, but I think Joe Rogan, Jimmy Dore, Katie Halper, Aaron Mate, there's just such a long list of people, but they've gotten, massive followings on the internet and on YouTube, and YouTube doesn't make it easy for them. It's like they make it really hard for them. They censor them all the time. But the thing is I get into this in my book. What led to the Global Transformation Project was collecting all this science, and my book is the new second edition of the Gospel of Science. And in that book, I actually discuss what I call the new media, and it's these people that have gotten like hundreds of thousands or millions, like Russell Brand, millions of viewers, because they just sit there and just tell common truths, common sense truths. And people are hungry for truth. And that's part of the awakening. Part of the awakening is they're waking up and they're realizing that they can't follow idols. They can't find their, saviors in media or in government or whatever. They just have to stick to truth and compassion. And people like Russell Brand and people like Joe Rogan and people like Jimmy Dore and these different people, they're anti-war generally. And they're compassionate and accepting people. And so people are being magnetically drawn to them. And so this is part of the awakening that's going on. It's like you have to have all the darkness exposed for the newness to start to come through. And so I think that's what we're witnessing. So when things start to feel too intense for everybody, remember to breathe. That always makes a huge difference. Just remember to breathe, and then realize that that there's actually, this is all leading somewhere good. I truly believe that. I think every time the powers that be squeeze tighter, more people squeeze out through their fingers.
Sure.
And so I think we have to go through this. It's like Walt Whitman said, these are the days that must happen to you.
Well, there's no question that if it was 1930, people were sitting around this country going, I don't know, man. I mean, we had a good run. Mm-hmm. The future doesn't look good. Nothing grows. It doesn't rain. The economy's destroyed. Mm-hmm. Look at all these problems everywhere.
Right.
It's over.
Yeah.
I would imagine people in the 1930s were like, it's over.
Yeah.
And here we are. It clearly wasn't over. Yeah. But it's almost like with the consciousness revolution potential that you're awakening, that you're talking about, and the fact that the internet plays into that, in both very positive ways and potentially very negative ways that we've already seen. It's the history of Western civilization. We go, the fall of the Roman Empire, the Dark Ages, and then the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment ended sometime. I'm not sure exactly when it ended. Well, it's not going on right now, though. We're in almost like another Dark Ages in some regards.
Well, I think it's happening planet-wide, to be honest with you. But there's two realities. There's the popular culture, corporate media. And when I say popular culture, I'm talking about Netflix. Prime, everything, and basically everything that people
the popular consciousness that people engage with. They say, "Did you see that show last night?"
Yeah, around the water cooler. Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, so you got that level of reality, but then there's a whole other level of reality that's happening underneath, and that's actually one of the things I wanted to mention earlier. Was we were talking about the violence. One of the things that I get to in my book, because like I said, one of the largest determinants of what our future is going to be is what our vision of possibility is, what we think the world is right now. And one of the big misconceptions, and I think it goes right to the heart of a lot of stuff we're talking about with media manipulation. One of the biggest things is that, and I do a lot of public presentations, so I always mention this because my job is stress management. So I go into a corporation or a hospital or whatever, and my job is to teach people stress management tools. And so one of the things that I started talking about was the fact that violent crime rates are at 40-year lows, and I have the data in my book. I have a graph in the new second edition of the Gospel of Science, and it shows that violent crime rates have been dropping. And you get these little bumps, but they're still down here at 40-year lows. And the reason that that's really important to bring home to people is because we're led to believe by media, because what mainstream or corporate media realizes is they realize that if they get us angry or upset or frightened, it releases stress chemicals, biochemical stress triggers. And what happens is we get addicted to those chemicals. And so we start coming back for more viewership. Yeah, and so that's why the media is always shocking and frightening.
If it leads, baby.
That's exactly correct. Yeah, and there's research in this. I have it all. All the science is meticulously cited at the end in my book. But so they've got people thinking that violent crime is going through the roof when it's really at 40-year lows, not just in the United States, but in many countries around the world. And so what should happen when we have less violent, radically less violent crime? We should have less prisons, but we don't. We imprison more of our people than any country on the planet, and it's that fear. And so you see how getting mind-body practices in public education, having the stress-fear part of students' brains shrink, and the empathy, compassion parts of their brain. See, for 40 years I've been an activist, and so I've been on countless street corners, before the internet, passing out flyers and then doing everything on the internet since then. And the thing that you realize if you go out and commit yourself to these kind of things is it's very difficult to get somebody to see a different reality. If they believe that the Russians are the most evil thing in the history of the planet and they have to be destroyed, it's like no amount of information that you give them will kind of shake that. You know what I mean? It's like they're stuck in their brain. And what the science shows is that mind-body practices, they reduce that part of the brain that automatically rejects new information. Now, it doesn't mean that you're gullible and that you accept everything. It just means that you don't auto-reject. Your brain goes into a mode where it's willing to take information in and then make sense of that information before it rejects or accepts it. And so this would be a huge thing to be teaching kids all over the planet,
Right.
is how to think in a coherent way where they can actually take in new information.
Well, let's check in with the phones and see if somebody has a comment to what you're speaking to, Bill. 816-931-5534. That's 931-KKFI. Good morning. You're on the radio.
How's that sticking in?
It's Russ.
So, you know what? your guest sounds interesting, but I have to take issue with his being a Putin apologist.
He's a Putin apologist? How's that?
Oh, he definitely is. When he says Ukraine cannot win the war, that he's basically blamed the United States. I'm sure he believes the NATO expansion is the reason why, it's on.
Of course.
It's the fault
of course.
It's the fault of NATO.
Yes, of course. Of course, everybody knows that. Even Kissinger knew that.
Kissinger, the 99-year-old.
Well, he's a war criminal, but he's still got that one, right?
Why did they all want to join NATO?
The thing is, okay, I was in the anti-nuclear movement back in the 80s. That's when Gorbachev.
That figures, but go ahead.
That's when Gorbachev and Ronald
Russ,
Reagan.
the pro-Duke guy. Russ, yeah.
Ronald Reagan actually, ended the nuclear arms race, and it was really kind of the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union. And the agreement was that NATO would not move east. That was the agreement. We made that agreement, and
that is not true.
That is true.
Well, yeah, there was never an official agreement. That was
not ratified. That was not ratified by
I don't
Congress.
care. What I'm saying is that's what Reagan told him.
Yeah.
That's what we told him.
You need to look that up again because you're just not accurate.
Well, actually, it is accurate.
Everyone
I'm not the
said
only
that.
one
You're
saying
not,
it.
dude. You're
Everyone
not. My
says
wife is
that.
from Ukraine, dude. You're not accurate.
Okay.
You're a Russian. You're a Russian apologist.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And you're a Ukrainian apologist, Russ, I guess.
Well, the thing is I'm for the Ukrainian people. I don't want to see Ukrainians used as cannon fodder by a military-industrial complex.
Well, it's too late. It's too late for that.
Oh no! All we have to do is agree to not that the Ukraine would be a non-aligned nation, and that NATO wouldn't move into the Ukraine, and then we would save a lot of Ukrainian lives. I don't see what's so hard about that.
So what about Sweden and Finland? They share an 850-mile border with Russia.
Well, we told the Russians that we weren't going to move east, so it's too bad that we're
That's just not true.
breaking our promise.
You're just wrong. There's an interpretation on
do you know how
what
many
they
people?
said.
Do you know how many people?
Hey,
Do you know
Russ,
how many people
it's-
the Russians lost in World War II?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you know how many people the Russians lost in World War II?
I don't care. We're not
Oh, you
talking
don't
about
care?
World War II. We're
Oh, okay.
talking about now.
That was their parents and grandparents.
That
That was their parents and grandparents. My father was in World War II. 3 years frontline combat in Patton's army, liberated Dachau.
And
No, I'm just saying we have emotional ties to these. They have emotional ties to these 20 million people they lost from an attack from Europe.
who?
The Russians. You might want to learn a little history before you condemn
Stalin was
people.
Stalin was going to attack Western Europe if Hitler had done it first. I mean, you understand that, right?
Stalin was going to attack Western Europe if Hitler. Where do you get your history, Russ? Do you just make it up?
No, there's a Russian general that came out with that not too long ago. That you really think that Stalin was going to build up his military?
So one Russian general, Stalin got caught off guard. Stalin was trying to negotiate a peace with a non-aggression pact with the Nazis. Hitler wanted to break that.
He had one.
Hitler broke that. Hitler broke that. Not Stalin. Stalin had no interest in doing that. Stalin was basically
that's not true.
okay. Well, Stalin was basically a weak leader, and then World War II. He seized a moment and became a hero for Russia because of World War II. He was kind of a broken leader before then in many ways. But back to the whole idea of apologizing for Russia. It's pretty well documented that American diplomats tried to assure the Russians at the fall of the Soviet Union, and many people have talked about this, from Kissinger to Jim Baker and all these other people who were right there saying, you don't kick them while they're down because eventually they'll stand back up and they're going to be mad. And now here we are. And your wife's country's in the middle of it, but you like to throw around all these Putin apologists and all this other stuff. So why don't we just drop some nuclear bombs on them and just end it, Russ?
Well, that's where we're going. We're headed toward that path.
Well, that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Russ.
My father, when I was a little kid, he told me a lot of stories from the war. And he told me one that really stuck with me, and it made me really sensitive to when we're manipulated by media propaganda or government propaganda. He said that when he was in the war, he said, I never had anything against the German soldiers. He said, I just felt like they were caught up in the same machine that I was. But he said the Hitler Youth and the SS scared the hell out of me because they bought the propaganda hook, line, and sinker. And that terrifies me. And that terrifies me when I see Americans talk about nuclear war or talk about letting people be used as cannon fodder because they believe propaganda on the news. It sends chills up my spine.
I don't get my propaganda from the news. I talk to people on the ground in Ukraine through my wife. I'm bypassing the American propaganda.
Yeah, well,
you're sure spouting it quite well.
It sounds like you're completely infected by it, though,
yeah,
Russ.
It really does, Russ.
Yeah,
I am. Because I've been in Ukraine, and I'm quite aware that Putin has done something. Putin has elevated himself to the most hated man in Ukraine. He is now the most hated man in Ukraine.
Well, it depends on whether you're talking to the Ukrainians that were attacked by the puppet government that the U.S. installed.
Of course.
If you're talking to the Ukrainians,
I'm talking to
in the East.
I'm talking to Roger Stone now. Not Roger Stone, the other one.
Okay, Russ. So Putin's the most hated man in Ukraine, and what? And what, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see personal grudges or personal opinions or whatever. We're talking about human beings that are dying for no reason. All we've got to do is promise the Russians we won't move east. We could end this thing. We don't have to see one more Ukrainian die. I just feel like you're playing politics with people's lives, Russ.
You should stop that, Russ. It's inappropriate. You're just a postman. Did we lose Russ? We lost Russ. 816-931-5534. That's 931-KKFI. That's the telephone number to the on-air studio. People get emotional about that stuff.
Well, they're misled.
Clearly, right.
They're misled. That's how we've gotten into every war that we've gotten into. In my lifetime, Vietnam. My generation, we thought we were all going to get chewed up in Vietnam. We just assumed when we were in high school that's where we were going to go, and it was all based on a lie. The Gulf of Tonkin didn't happen. And then Bush. In Bush's daddy's war, that Q80 girl that said that she worked in the hospitals and that the
Iraqi soldiers are coming in and flipping over the incubators, right?
Drop babies on the floor. Yeah, that was all a lie. She came and she said that in front of Congress. She interviewed on the media. She lied. They lied all of us into that war, and it was all made up. She was the daughter of a Q80 official. It was all a Hollywood production. That should outrage everybody, and it should make everybody suspicious of every war. And then we had this Syrian thing. They were trying to tell us that Assad was using chemical weapons on his people, and we have whistleblowers from the Gray Zone did some great work on that. Aaron Mate, and now we know that didn't happen. And weapons of mass destruction.
Here's the problem: when you say something like that, maybe not half, some of the people out there, what they hear is like, oh, you're saying Assad's a good guy? Because we have this whiplash consciousness where, war can be bad, and the guy that I'm saying we shouldn't fight war against can also be bad. Both things can be true. We can acknowledge that, is everyone...
Yep.
This illusion that there's only good guys and there's only bad guys.
Yeah.
When we're talking about governments and billions of dollars and millions of soldiers, there aren't good guys and bad guys.
Right.
There's good actions, there's bad actions, and most of them are probably going to be bad actions.
Right.
816-931-5534. It's amazing how people get so involved in that. And if you say, I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton, they're like, well, then why'd you vote for Donald Trump?
Yeah, right.
Well, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
You think that. You're filling in blanks for me.
Yeah, that was the first election that I didn't vote for anybody. Was the last election I didn't...
You mean 2020?
Yeah, well, I voted for Bernie when he ran.
Sure.
And then I just wrote him in. But in the last election, I didn't vote for a president.
816-931-5534.
I would have voted People's Party if they would have been on the ballot.
But who they wanted, Tulsi and Dan.
Well,
Crenshaw.
it's just a matter of just
Well,
finding.
Popeye down there in Texas, he again, these people, Dan Crenshaw may have had the best of intentions but he gets in, he becomes part of the machine, just like AOC does.
Well,
these people go like, hey, if I get elected a couple more times, I can have a career out of this.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll lay low. Yeah, I won't do a Madison Cawthorn. I won't start talking about all the orgies and coke that I've been invited to do since I got here. I'll lay low. I won't make Nancy upset so I can stay in office.
I phoned Meg for AOC. I'm horribly disappointed with her.
816-931-5534-931-KKFI. Good morning. You're on the radio.
Oh, hey, it's Adam in Roland Park. How's it going?
Good, Adam. Yourself?
Oh, hey, not too bad. He kind of, your guest there, he reminded me of a famous quote from George W. Bush there. Oh, how did it go? Like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice.
Won't get fooled again. Won't get fooled again. I always think of the Who when I hear that.
Yeah, do you remember how the rest of that went? Could you finish that one for me?
Yeah, I think it was won't get. Well, it's fool me. Okay, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me is what he was trying to say.
Yeah, and he kind of realized halfway through that last part once he was getting at.
Fool me twice, you can't get fooled again.
Well, my favorite Bush.
What I'm kind of leading into, I got 2 points here. You mentioned you really think it's a good idea to cut a deal with the Russians on Ukraine, like give them part of Donbass or something like that.
Well, those people want to.
It's a good idea to just cut a deal. And
those people want to be part of Russia. Those people want to be part of Russia. They were having missiles fired upon them by the Ukrainian government that we put in power a few years ago.
Well, I think I'll tell you what, fool me once, fool me twice. If I remember right, back in I think it was like '96, the Ukrainians signed a deal where they agreed to not have any nuclear weapons. They just give them away. I forget to whom, but they gave them away in the promise that Russia would never attack them ever again.
Well, it's too bad Washington put them in this situation because they kept encouraging them to fight the Russians instead of an agreement. That was coming out of Washington. And then they put all that pressure on all the European governments, really every government in the world. We do that. We've been doing that, in my lifetime. Every time they want to start a war, they start putting the heat on every government in the world, and they start, really twisting their arms, threatening to break their arms, economically or whatever.
I don't think the Ukrainians were really threatening anybody previous to, what was that date, February 24th? Do you remember any threats of war?
Well, it was Washington. It was Washington. It was Washington.
Nazis in the Ukraine. I'm sure you would agree with that point. But
of course, but it was Washington.
My next talking point, I'm done talking about that. I think I made my point there. But you've seen all those 5-star reviews on Amazon, I'm sure, for any product you look up and review.
Yeah, the 5-star reviews, the fake ones.
Yeah, like the $10 rubber soccer ball. That's like, this thing's amazing. I feel like a pro player, but I feel that's the way that the reporting on the crime rate in this country has been. If you look at the report and take a look at it hook, line, and sinker, it looks like crime rate's gone down, but snitches be getting stitches. You know what I'm saying?
Not really. What are you saying?
Well, he's saying that the crime rates may have gone down, but we're dealing with a situation where people are much less likely to go to law enforcement to report crime in the first place. Is that what you meant, Adam?
Like, my car got broken into Saturday morning, very early Saturday morning. I went down to the police station to file a police report, and the police department was closed.
Uh-huh.
And Google said, the police department was open. And I called in to the 24-hour helpline. Turns out that 24-hour helpline has been closed. Is that a police report I file going to show up in some report somewhere? Is there any guarantee that that's going to be, or are they just going to write it off to some thing there?
So did you file a report, or?
I can't. I just told you I couldn't. I went 2 different ways to do it, and I can't file a report from the car being broken into, them stealing stuff out of my car.
So it's like when I'm sitting
here as a person, and that's what I feel like. I feel like, what was that guy, Jeff Bridges in The Big Lebowski, when he had his car stolen and they took the cassette tapes?
Uh-huh.
Not to the dude, man.
I remember that scene, how much the police cared in that scene.
Well, sure.
About his 8-track, so.
It's a minute after 1 right here on 90.1 FM, KKFI, Kansas City. But I think the broader point is that I can remember when I lived in Hyde Park, and I still hear, I mean, I can hear this on my front porch where I'm at now, but like hearing like a gun battle, hearing like two people shooting at each other, tires screeching, you know, police sirens, all this stuff going on. You're like, wow, I don't know what that was. I can't wait to read about that in the paper tomorrow, and then it's never in the paper. It's just another random act of violence that takes place in the middle of the night. It doesn't get counted as a statistic, doesn't mean anything, because society is kind of falling apart like that.
Well, I mean, what
the fact you said Hyde Park? My buddy used to be a manager at a Mercedes dealer in town, and he lived in Hyde Park. And you know those big lawn and leaf bags?
Sure.
Yeah, they put those in front of his demo Mercedes after they took the wheels off of it and left it on bricks. And fortunately, the owner was like, "Steve, you should have told me you needed the money." at least the owner had a sense of humor about it, but for a lot of people, that's kind of make or break them for that month. So,
yeah, for
I mean,
sure.
that's kind of the world we're kind of heading towards.
I mean,
so,
yeah.
if you want to feel like things are utopian and
No,
I'll let you
wait,
that line.
no, hold
that's
on,
not all I
hold
got
on.
for you, pal. You have a good one.
Yeah, you too. No, I'm not saying we live in a utopian world. There is crime. There is crime. There always will be. For humanity, there's always going to be somebody that's going to...
Bill, I'm going to have to apologize. I'm usually kind of negative and cynical on the program. You're bringing a level of optimism and a fresh breath of air. You're saying there are solutions. These people don't want to hear about solutions at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Well,
we don't want to... That's not what we do down here.
Let me throw this out there. I mean, the powers that be like us thinking that everybody around us is dangerous. Because then we support putting more and more people in prison, and we support the prison industrial complex. I mean, you know, we get played. And, you know, what do we base this idea that the world is just so incredibly violent on? Because I don't see it. You know, when I walk down the street, and I've worked everywhere. I've worked in Watts Compton. I've worked in East LA. I've worked all over the place. And I've never seen this. I see it in movies, and I see it on TV, and I used to see it on those horrible cop shows, you know, where they were always dragging black people out of their house in their underwear. And, you know, I mean, we're talking about a constructed reality here. You know, this idea just because somebody got their tires stolen or, you know, or something happened, you know, that all of a sudden that means that violent crime rates are dropping. I don't buy that. I mean, it's not just in the United States. It's in various countries. Now, I grew up in the 60s, and we weren't people that called the cops every time something happened. I guarantee it. You know, a lot of people, used PIG when they were talking about cops. We're not living in some, you know, new place. No, violent crime rates are at 40-year lows. You know, I can show you the data, and it's not just the United States, it's other countries around the world. Now, what's interesting is over the last 40 years that violent crime rates have been dropping precipitously. That's the same time that mind-body practices have spread across the planet like a wildfire. And that wildfire was really ignited by the Beatles when they went to study meditation with the Maharishi in India. It was on television. You know, they were on TV all over the planet, and kids like me all over the planet were looking at that. And I think
that was a way that you kind of grounded this whole psychedelic movement that was very much so a corporate movement. It became so in the 60s, where that's why hippies are something that we can readily identify, because there was a certain style of dress. There were things that you could sell them and market to them, and it became another way for Madison Avenue or whoever to make their money.
Yeah.
But then the Beatles do go to India and do have this kind of spiritual awakening. I bet that did have and played a role.
It did. It had a huge impact. And George Harrison, in an interview, he said, he said we were just 4 working class British kids that all of a sudden had more money than, you know, we could ever dream of. You know, we could buy any physical pleasure that we wanted. And he said, you know, we just weren't happy. And so we ended up going to India, to delve into our consciousness. And, you know, and they all meditated their whole lives, you know, Paul McCartney.
It worked for all of them except for John, apparently.
Well, it worked. He did. I know he did criticize it. He was disillusioned, and that happens when you first start learning how to meditate. You have, oftentimes you'll have these great experiences, and then you start kind of digging in the mud of your mind, and then that part's not quite as fun. And that's where John was when he made that comment. Yeah. But he ended up being a lifetime meditator.
Day 2 of the ayahuasca trip. Yeah. 816-931-5534. That's 931-KKFI. Good morning. You're on the radio.
What do you know, Ben?
John, what's going on, man? We were worried you were dead when you don't call in for a couple weeks.
Well, I'm pretty close, but I'm still alive. But
All right, that's good to hear.
To commend your guest there tonight. He's 100% correct on the Ukraine. And I don't care what Russ has to say. I listened to a guy out of Florida that's got a member of his family that's in Ukraine. So you hear a different story from him. But so I just wanted to, I mean, with all the things that the United States has done, I seen that Colin Powell here the other night. They were honoring him and everything. He's the one that sat in front of, I think it was the UN, and said, yeah, they got weapons of mass destruction. And then he turns around and says, well, that's what they told me. He said, so he ain't taking the rap for it, But your guest is too optimistic on the big picture, because this crap ain't going to get straightened out. And the only thing I disagree with him on, like I said, I'm 73, so I went through Vietnam, seen all the riots and the whole 9 yards. But when I was growing up, I never seen them going into schools and killing little kids in these mass shootings. So I don't I never heard of that at all. Yeah. So that's a sign that you just live in a sick society.
Well, okay. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you'll never turn on the news and have the news tell you that 6,999,999,000 people were really nice to each other today and opened the door for each other and said please and thank you. But that's what happens all over the planet every day. But they're not going to put it on the news. They're not going to put it on the news because that's not what kicks in the stress chemicals that gets people to keep watching the news and thinking that's the only place they're going to get the truth.
You're correct on all that, and I understand that, but how old are you?
65.
All right, so you've seen a lot of things too, and you got to admit they didn't have they would have reported these mass shootings and these shootings of kids in schools, back in the 60s and everything, and this stuff wasn't going on like it is today.
Well, we didn't have the weaponry back then.
That's regardless of I I understand that. No, everybody wasn't packing AKs, and I understand that. But anyways, I agree with, like I said, the whole story, and Ben's right too. When you said like the Russians, they lost the most in World War II,
right.
And Stalin, he about crapped his pants because when Hitler attacked him, they got within, I think it was like 50 or 60 miles, and he thought he was all.
Yeah,
the only
for sure.
thing that caught Hitler was, the reason they didn't take Stalingrad was because they run out of fuel and the winter got so bad. Mm-hmm. They froze to death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I wanted to ask you, I've tried to join some of these yoga classes, but I can't really find it because I really truly believe that would help me. But I can't really find any here in Kansas City that that I could go to.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. There's a great yoga teacher named Linda Putoff, and she teaches at Wellspring Plaza. Now, also, if you go on YouTube, there's a.
No, I don't have access to the computer.
What part of town do you live in, John?
I live at 40 Highway and Nolan Road.
Okay, so if he's over on Independence side, and you know anyone good over there?
Well, Linda Putoff is Putthoff, I think. Linda Putoff.
Where's Wellspring Plaza?
Wellspring Plaza. If you just look it up in the phone book, Wellspring Plaza.
Man, there ain't no more phone books here. Give us a program. Do you know a phone number?
No, I wish I had it right here at my fingertips, but I don't. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, where is she located? What part of town is she in?
It's in the plaza. See, I actually taught with her.
The Country Club Plaza. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think it's the plaza down here. Yeah, the plaza.
You're not from Kansas City, Bill?
No, I'm from Overland Park, but I taught with her at the Westport Allen Center back when the yoga center.
Well, maybe you can do the Kansas City a real service. You sound like a hell of a nice guy. Maybe if you and sometime in the next week when you get time or something, if you could get the information to Ben, like for a phone number.
Yeah, sure.
Something.
That
would be great because he would give it out over the phone.
Yeah, I'll email it to Ben. Yeah. Yeah.
As far as what you're saying, I don't care about Russ. I'm not going to call him names. I'm going to be polite or anything, but but it's like you said, most of the people just hear this stuff and they automatically believe it.
Yeah.
But they've been doing that ever since, Vietnam and
Yep.
all the rest of it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's,
Hey, I
that's
got-
not going to change.
Plaza Wellspring,
Plaza Wellspring.
8900 State Line Road.
I think that's it. Yeah, Plaza Wellspring.
You got,
8900 State Line Road.
you got a piece of paper. It's 816-550-5252.
550.
Five what?
550-5252.
5252?
Yes, sir.
550-5252. Yeah, and Linda Putoff is the teacher that I was talking about.
John, you have a great night, man.
Oh, thanks, Ben. And
Yeah, you'll love
got
yoga.
a great show, and good luck to your guests.
Thank you. You'll love yoga. Go for it.
Yep, absolutely. Everyone should. I mean, using your body is an important thing.
Yeah, but that meditative quality, the research shows that mind-body exercise outperforms regular exercise.
Well, it's amazing how my wife was a yoga instructor, and I guess still is, but doesn't do it actively, and taught me a number of poses years ago when I had hurt myself. She was like, "You look pitiful. I need to show you how to stretch your lower back out." And we did that, and it's incredibly difficult to start. It was probably one of the more difficult things I had ever done in my life, because if you're a competitive person, or if you're a physical person, which I'm not necessarily the most competitive or physical person,
Yeah, just
but
slowing down.
You want to get into,
hard.
want to do that pose the way it's supposed to be done. You want to get
Yeah.
all the way in there.
Yeah, yeah.
And you realize that it's going to take years.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, it does take
Yeah.
years. And once you finally get to where, your warrior is strong and you're not shaking, or your locust is not destroying your forearms or something like that, right? Then you feel power.
Right.
Right?
But,
And you really do feel power.
but everybody out there realize you're going to be enjoying tremendous benefits even while those years are going on. So it's not like an all or nothing thing. You don't have to master it to get the benefits. While you're going through that process, you're already lowering your blood pressure and slowing your aging process and boosting your immunity and all the things that science shows this stuff will do. So, even while you're going through that learning process and some of the struggles that you'll face with it, you'll be getting tremendous benefits. And really, it's one of the most revolutionary things that you can do, because it would help you avoid a massive amount of pharmaceuticals in your life. It's like I'm 65, and most of the people I know that are my age, they're on a bunch of pharmaceuticals, and I'm not, and my wife's not, and we don't need to be, and so
Well, it becomes a choice thing.
yeah.
Right, you go to a doctor and you go, "Hey doc, I don't feel good. My digestion isn't right. I don't have good energy. I don't have this." Like, well, look, what do you eat? That you eat terribly. So I guarantee you, if you started eating fresh fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans or whatever, you would 100% feel better. It would take a month. It would take 3 months. It would take a year or something like that. And people are like, "Huh?
Yeah.
You ain't got something I can just take right now?
I know. Yeah,
I
but-
can't just take a pill." And that's why we're in a state in our society where the number one drug in America is it's an opiate that's powerful enough for an elephant.
Yeah.
Because we're in so much pain.
Yeah, and a lot of it's emotional, and economic stress and all these kind of things. And, these are all a health issue. Economic stress is a health issue.
Oh, my God, it is.
And that falls on deaf ears, because I do a lot of programs, about wellness and mind-body practices and things like that. But if I bring up the fact that everybody out, that massive numbers of people out there are just struggling so hard just to get by, financially every day, and that's a massive stress. These, it doesn't always flow good with these mind-body people. That kind of blows my mind. You know what I mean?
No, sure.
I mean, because it's,
Well,
economic stress is a major health issue.
Most people who are into the mind-body thing aren't going to be economically stressed.
Well, they may have, wealthier clients, but, and then that's the same thing with the media, it's like,
I think that's a true statement. People who are taking a moment to look around generally, aren't under the same pressures
the
as
wall.
people
Well,
like that. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, sort of.
If you have time for self-development, I don't see a lot of self-development amongst the poors.
Well,
There could be.
yeah. I mean, we could be teaching.
What's the incentive?
We could be teaching it to poor kids. That's for sure.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, they could be getting into public school, and then once they have it, then it become part of their lives. But I wasn't very financially well off when I first started doing this stuff. What the deal was with me was, like I said, my dad was in 3 years of frontline combat, and when you're growing up with somebody who's been in 3 years of, frontline combat, World War II combat, it's an interesting journey, and so that's what drove me to Mind Body was anxiety, depression, stress, all that kind of stuff.
816-931-5534. That's 931-KKFI. Good morning. You're on the radio.
Hey, this is Calvin. How you doing, Ben?
Calvin, I'm good.
Hey, how's it
We
going?
got Bill Douglas in here.
Bill Douglas. That sounds like is he any kin to Frederick Douglass?
Oh, Frederick Douglass. No, not that I'm aware of, but you never know.
Yeah, Frederick Douglass is. I think his dad was white and his mother was black. So.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, two quick comments, Ben. First is, if you want to know why it's so easy for an 18-year-old to walk into a grocery store in Buffalo and kill 10 people, and the other one walked into school, a Texas school, is because these teenagers grow up playing these violent video games like Call of Duty, where there's blood spilling out of the characters that you're shooting at in these video games. So it just desensitizes them to the type of damage that they can do to someone when they, like those kids in Uvalde, Texas, they said their bodies were so mangled by the bullets that the coroner had to do a DNA testing to match the child with who their parents were, so they couldn't even recognize them.
Right.
And because these violent video games. I grew up in the 70s too, and we didn't have any school walk-ins. But these teenagers they're so used to playing these violent video games that it just desensitizes them as far as.
But Calvin, when you
shoot somebody like that.
When you were growing up in the 70s, people would get into fights. People were more physical when they had an argument. And that's something that children, especially young boys, you're not allowed to fight. You're not allowed to be physical, right? So then you don't get that kind of boundary space established. And I'm not suggesting that we need children to beat the crap out of each other to figure things out, but we live in a society that's incredibly violent, but it's an impersonal violence, right? I hate you, I'm going to shoot you from across the street, I'm not going to come over and hit you in the face. And I don't, there's a disconnect there. If you are rolling around hitting, on the floor, wrestling with somebody, hitting somebody, that's a physical interaction, right? And that's something that our society lacks in so many ways, is physical interactions.
Yeah, right. And especially since the pandemic, we can't even touch each other or breathe on each other anymore, so that's a whole other thing. But
it's not just the video games, Calvin. It's the desensitization from violence is in many aspects of our society.
Well, yeah, but what I'm talking about is changing the program so that these things won't have that impact on people, because everything starts in human consciousness. And what we know is that if we were teaching school kids how to go into that alpha theta brainwave state, for an hour a day every day for 12 years, it actually shrinks the stress and fear part of their brain, and it increases the empathy and compassion parts of their brain. And so you're talking about a kid that has a completely different wired brain by the time he gets old enough to go buy a semi-automatic weapon. And, that's where everything changes. I mean, if you want to get down to the root, it's consciousness. And we have these scientifically proven technologies that we could be exposing all the school children to, that would not only make them smarter and better readers, better at math, more verbally eloquent, all these things. It's all scientifically proven, and then it would also be boosting their immune system. And after the pandemic that we went through, my God, wouldn't it be great to be boosting every kid's T cell count? There was a Tai Chi study at UCLA, and they were checking people's T cell counts, and so they had a control group and a Tai Chi group, and at the end of the study, I think it was 12 weeks, the Tai Chi group had 50% more T cells. And what the science shows coming out of COVID was that the healthcare workers that had higher T cell counts were much less likely to get COVID, and also they suffered much less from it if they got it, if their T cell count was higher. So we know how to actually boost kids' T cells by count by 50%. So it's just insane that we're not doing this in schools, because it could avert a lot of these violence problems in schools, because the schools that do it have already seen that. The schools that have Mind Body, they've already seen a reduction in violence. Prisons that have done it have already seen a reduction in violence. So this is all scientifically proven, and this wouldn't be hard to do. It'd be easy to start teaching kids how to do this stuff for 1 hour a day.
Yeah, but and one more thing, Bill, switch subjects for 1 minute. We'll talk about these high gas prices, because I know, Benjamin, you have the answer. Now, the United States was getting 8% of their fuel from Russia. And I don't know if that fuel was natural gas or crude oil, but they were getting 8%. But I looked at a statistic on the internet today, and it said that in the first quarter of 2022, the four or five major oil companies in America were having out 5.48 billion in profits in the first quarter, and they said that's double the amount of profits that they had last year. And gas just started going up, Bill and Benjamin. Gas just went up just last month. So if they were averaging 5 billion in the first quarter in profits, their profits are really gonna go up. But here's the thing, Benjamin. If you got the petroleum to put it into these gas stations, either you got it to put it into these gas stations or you don't. So if you got it to put it into these gas stations, why are you charging me $6 for regular unleaded instead of $3?
Because they can.
Because they're trying to collapse this economy.
Well, they're just going to make as much as they can.
That's what happens when economies hyperinflate. People with assets get greedy, and everything turns to this. But we're watching the end of petrodollar hegemony over global markets. We're watching the end of the American empire. So it's gonna be a little rough. And did you see, Calvin? $10 a gallon in Mendocino, California, for $10 for a gallon of gas.
And what hurts me so much, Ben, is I'm a rideshare driver, and so it's really killing us.
I'll bet.
You have to spend $100 every other day in gas just to pick up and drop off people. But hey, I'm gonna get off this air and enjoy the rest of your
Thank you, Calvin.
night.
Yeah,
appreciate your
Calvin.
phone call.
Nice talking to you.
816-931-5534. That's 931-KKFI. Yeah, this is happening on purpose, what we're seeing right now. This isn't accidental. Bill, we were told 20 years ago that it was the end of suburbia, that Hubbard's Peak said that, oil production cannot meet demand because we will no longer be able to meet demand because of its oil. And it's just like, I believe in environmentalism. I would like to see us have clean burning fuels. I would like to see us not pollute the oceans and the rivers and the streams and kill species of animals for profit and all these other things. But our whole society is based upon, in this country, inexpensive fuel. Kansas City used to have trains that would take you from here to there, and all this infrastructure. Well, that's gone now.
Yeah,
we can bring it back with these little make-believe trains and these other things. But that it's always so depressing to me when they're like, "We were doing work on the street and we found railroad tracks from 100 years ago."
Yeah, General Motors, I think, got rid of a lot of that because they wanted buses.
Yeah, they sure did.
And then people didn't like buses, so.
But it's you want to talk about stressors.
Yeah.
Going to fill up, you may have to do an hour of meditation before you go to Quick Trip tomorrow morning.
Well, one of the things I get into in my book, the new second edition of the Gospel of Science, is the science on what they find is that people that are at a certain wealth level, they start to lose the ability to empathize with other people.
Yeah,
and
like
this is all
read faces.
Science-based.
Read faces, like the way that we communicate with our facial expressions.
Yeah, they can't.
Yeah, people with a whole bunch of money just don't see sadness on like the little peons cleaning up after they don't care. It's like indifference.
Right. Yeah, and so you have that. You have really it's a psychosis. So you have a wealth psychosis that a lot of people. I'm not saying every wealthy person it's all different levels with people, but we know scientifically that if you are ultra wealthy, there's a big propensity of a chance that you will become less empathetic to other people. And so you have that, and then you also have an obsession with profit, no matter what.
Right.
Just no matter what. There's just no rules. If you're successful, in our culture, if you're successful, if you make a lot of money, you're a swell guy or you're a swell lady. It just it doesn't matter how you got it. It's just, that's where it is. So you have this combination of kind of a psychosis of the ultra wealthy, and then you also have this psychosis of just abject greed. And so that's part of the awakening, I think. It's like things are getting squeezed because they've lost their minds. The powers that be have kind of lost their minds, and they're just, the only thing they know is just to grab more and more and more and more and more. And so what it's doing is it's waking people up to the fact that they're going to have to, and you're starting to see, I don't know how many Starbucks are unionized now, isn't it? Didn't it go from like 1 to 100 within 2 weeks?
Snowball runs downhill.
Yeah, that's right. And then you had that kid Smalley up in
Christopher Smalls.
Anybody under 50 is a kid, so I'm not insulting anybody here. When you're my age, anybody under 50 is a kid. So yeah, but anyway, so
The organization, the Amazon warehouse.
yeah. So look what they did, the Amazon Union, it's like this is, and I think unionization may be where the big changes are going to come in the future, because there was a time when unions were socially conscious, and they were against wars, and they shut down wars. Dock workers actually shut down docks and things like that. And so I think that's where you're going to see the social change, a lot of the social change that is going to lift this country up to a whole new, and the world.
It's possible. I mean, because, Amazon developed, they knew that this would happen. Mm-hmm. And Amazon's very business model with how they have such a high turnover rate, 150% turnover per year, of their employees, almost makes it inherently very, very difficult to unionize.
People are disposable. Yeah, and that's been
people have always been disposable.
Yeah, that's been the model. Yeah, but see, that's starting to change because all of a sudden now they need employees. You know what I mean? It's like people are looking for employees. So we have power. We have power just because we're able to, fill the spaces and do the things that have to be done.
816-931-5534. That's 931-KKFI. Good morning. You're on the radio.
Hey, good morning. This is Bill from KC. How you guys doing?
What's up, Bill?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good. Hey, I have a couple questions for your guests. I've been listening all night, and so I guess I'm trying to understand. So you think most of the problems facing our society and the world can be changed through yoga, correct?
Well, mind-body exercises so that make these brainwave changes. So it's yoga, meditation, tai chi, qigong, and mindfulness. Those are the ones that have like a huge amount of science behind them.
Okay. Because you cited research, what specific research? You said that research shows, and there's a lot of research, and I'm very involved in the fitness community. I don't do yoga. I used to, because for my own personal reasons. A lot of good-looking women do yoga as well. It's a great way to meet people. But there's a lot of junk science in the fitness industry and stuff like you're talking about, where people are just trying to sell you stuff like oils. I mean, I've heard a lot about yoga and CBD and stuff like that, which I'm pretty skeptical of. So how do you prove this exactly?
Okay.
What's your research that you're citing?
Yeah, well, okay, I have a 700-page book called The New Second Edition of the Gospel of Science, and it has all this science that I'm talking about, and it also has, it's endnoted, so you can go right to the links, and I have a webpage where you can go to the live links. And
how could he find that?
Oh,
do you have a website?
Amazon or any bookseller, yeah.
No, bookseller is not Amazon. No.
Yeah, I know. Amazon is like a weird thing for people that have small businesses or books. It's like you have to deal with them, even though you despise the business model. So,
but how could people find your book? How could people?
If you just do a Google search for New Second Edition Gospel of Science, some bookseller will come up to the top that'll have it because it's available worldwide. And so now. What was it you were talking about just before? Because I had a comment to that. I'm sorry, when you asked me about where to get the book, I lost track.
Junk information.
Oh yes, the
in
science.
health.
Okay, the science. Okay, so a lot of the studies in the book, if you get the book and you look at it, they're National Institute of Health Studies, NIH studies, so those are high-level studies. They're from other universities around the planet. From Princeton, I do several sections on science done at Princeton University, the PAIR labs, the Princeton Engineering and Anomalies Research Labs. Some of the research that I talk about in the book is from the Institute of Noetic Sciences that was started by astronaut Edgar Mitchell, and they do some incredible science on human consciousness and the abilities of human consciousness. And so I spent 40 years putting this together, and I was very conscious about finding solid scientific research. And the thing is that when you go through the book, what you start to find is that the science is validated in so many different studies from so many different angles that it's impossible. It's impossible to. And the other thing too is it's like I've been doing mind-body stuff for 40 years, and one thing that I know, and I organize a world event called World Tai Chi Day that I mentioned earlier. It actually changed global consciousness. But so I interact with many mind-body teachers, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, or whatever, and we all know that these changes that the science in my book talks about, we all see these things happening in our lives. Everybody that knows us knows that we're way easier to get along with than we were before we started doing this stuff. And so then when you see the science that shows that it makes the empathy and compassion part of your brain bigger, that makes absolute sense, because all of our friends and all of our family tell us, wow, you're so much nicer than you used to be. So, you know what I mean? So you get this validation. And so I have solid science in the book, and then I also have 40 years of life experience that shows me this stuff is true. And, in the prisons that use this and the schools that use this, they're seeing the results. It's an ironclad case. It's not an iffy case. The reason you don't hear about it is because it's not going to make anybody $1 billion a year. This is a very simple, elegant solution to so many of humanity's problems, social and economic, but you're not going to hear about it. You're not going to hear about it on the news. But people are practicing this stuff all over the planet, and they're having, massive benefits in their lives. And we're seeing, violent crime rates at 40-year lows in the United States and many countries around the world. So something huge is happening. But like Gil Scott-Heron said, you ain't going to see, it ain't going to be televised. It's just not.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate your time and your answer. And one more time before I get off, because I'm going to Google this in. It's called the new...
Yeah, new second edition, The Gospel of Science.
Gospel of Science.
Yeah, because gospel means good news. Gospel means good news, so it's good. The good news of science. The new second edition, The Gospel of Science.
Thanks for your phone call, Bill.
Yeah, thank you. Nice talking to you.
Right back after this. This is the Paragon Radio program. We're talking to Bill Douglas here, and we'll be here until 2 o'clock.
90.1 FM KKFI, Kansas City Community Radio.
All right, 22 minutes until 2 o'clock. Right here on Community Radio in the 21st century, which is an optimistic century. We're optimistic. Trying to be optimistic down here. I mean, like, people normally tune in, Bill, to listen to cynicism and negativity and how the world's going to end and all this other stuff. Just on the brink. I mean, so back in 2012, everyone was convinced. I bought so much goddamn canned food. Everyone was so convinced that the world was going to end because the Mayan calendar and a lot of people were, I felt like a lot of people were disappointed that the world didn't end. A lot of people, that was their retirement plan. Some people have 401ks and stock options and other things. Other people were like, I just hope this ends. Right? That's true.
I know.
It's 100% true.
Yeah.
But the world did end. See, that's the important part. The world that existed 100 years ago is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. We live in like the shell of it, right? I mean, like, talking about, when they uncover train tracks underneath Main Street and go, look at there used to be a train going down Main, like archaeology or something. But that old world's gone. We're living in this in-between time, I guess. I mean, many people have entered into this new world, or have entered into the illusion of the new world. right? Which is this metaverse, this online reality, this one that's seeks to give you all these digital things that you can't have in the physical reality. You can't get a job and a family and have a house in the suburbs and a comfortable life. Well, don't worry. Get on Animal Crossing. Get on, some game, and you can build a reality for yourself in Minecraft. And that's the direction that we're going. And that the powers that be, the influential, the important people would like to see. I mean, what do you need all these poor people for? Why do you need millions of people living on top of each other in cities? I mean, right? Do you need that? Is that necessary? I mean, do people need to live as close as they do in Kansas City? I mean, is that ideal? Not only is that ideal for just the human being, but is that ideal for the elites? Because that's who when we're thinking about having, a spiritual awakening, that's who I would want to target. The people who are targeting me, the people that think that I have a responsibility to them, that I need to conform to what their desires are. Mm-hmm. Things like that.
One of the things, this is going to kind of stretch this conversation a bit, but, one of the things that the science shows is that when we go into these, if we teach public school children all over the planet how to do mind-body practices, how to go into that meditative alpha-theta brainwave state, it's about 8 hertz, which is, by the way, the vibratory rate of the planet Earth. And so anyway, we teach these kids how to go into these states, and as they're going into these states, what the science shows is that when you get a massive number of people going into those states, it has a calming and a healing and a kind of coherence creating effect on the global consciousness beyond those meditators. And so we're talking about changing, like the vibratory rate of the whole planet by introducing these practices into public education. And so then one of the things that this does is when you go into these states, you let go of everything. So you have to let go of everything. You let go of everything that you are, and you let go of all your opinions that you have about anybody else or whatever, or any systems or any programs or anything like that. And then what happens is your consciousness, your nervous system, your psyche, it gets rebooted. And there's a great line from the Tao Te Ching, which is kind of like the Taoist book of philosophy for Tai Chi, for Chinese philosophy. And anyway, there's a line in the Tao Te Ching, and it says, when I let go of what I am, I become what I might become. And I think that we're in a place right now as a society where systems are breaking down, and it seems horrible, but it's revealing the way things have been for a long, long time. And so like right now, we're feeling the pain of what's going on in the Ukraine, and it's a misguided policy coming out of Washington that's hurting all of us. And but this has been going on. The U.S. foreign policy has been doing this to people all over the planet, my whole lifetime. And so it's like now we're getting to a point where everybody is feeling the dysfunction. So it's not just those people in those third world countries where the bombs are flying, they're feeling the dysfunction. We're all feeling the dysfunction, and we're all getting to the point where we want a new way. We want to let go of what we've been so that we can become what we might be. And the psyche of the planet is changing because the vibratory rate of people all over the planet is changing. And so the planet Earth, despite what you see in the headlines, the planet Earth is vastly less violent than it's ever been before in human history. And but when you see it on the TV, it seems like it's happening constantly, everywhere, all the time. We hear about every violent incident that happens, but there's big changes happening. Violent crimes dropping, violence is less than it's ever been around the planet, and people are ready for some changes, and they're ready to get back in touch with their humanity. I think they're starting to realize that the shiny box in the corner of the living room isn't going to satisfy their lives.
The slime. 816, oozing out of... What's up, Michael?
Hey, Benjamin, how are you?
We're good, man. Oh, you're breaking up on us a little bit.
You still there, Michael? Okay, you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, your phone connection's kind of rough, but go ahead.
Let me switch over
Oh, that's
a little
better.
bit.
It's better now.
Okay, all right. So, Bill, you're pro-Russian and you're pushing Chinese and meditation. I think you're a secret agent, like coming in to sabotage America.
He's a commie. I think you've nailed him. He's a commie.
Good. I'm glad I got a laugh, because normally I try to use a little humor. I think it just goes by Jim and Benjamin. Hey, listen, I love what you're doing. I think we as humans we lean more towards the negative. And I say all the time that, our negative thoughts or negative words or actions that are 20 times more powerful than our positive ones. And I don't think that we are born with compassion. I know in my younger years, I certainly was not. I was oblivious to all that. Only in my aging self and a little bit of wisdom coming along and some experience, am I opening my eyes to and being compassionate towards others. And so I love what you're doing. And I know Benjamin's probably pulling his hair out because he gets all these callers, and it's amazing how many of them attack each other.
Well, there's some amazing science. You really brought something up that is really fascinating. And I was talking about the Princeton University Global Consciousness Project, where they had computers all over the planet, and they could see when people's consciousness would affect their computers. And Roger Nelson, he was the director of that project, and he directed it for, I think, 20 years. And anyway, he said that the most exciting thing that they found in that 20 years of research was that, so like the event that we organized, World Tai Chi Day, that was, it fell into a category that they called healing and compassion events. So that included World Yoga Day, World Tai Chi Day, World Peace Day, World Meditation Day, all these different things. And he said what they found over that 20 years of research was that, yes, when people were in states of fear or sorrow or panic, like Princess Diana's death or the September 11th tragedy, it did. It sent their computers off track because, billions of people around the planet were glued to their televisions. They were all in coherent, the same consciousness state. So it did affect their computers. But what they found was that when people held events, mass like meditation events or healing or compassion events around the planet, and that included like peace protests, they studied those as well. What they found was that those events that involved much smaller numbers of people actually affected the global consciousness more powerfully than the fear and tragedy events did. So that bodes really well for the future of humanity, because the way that Roger Nelson from Princeton put it was that shows that our compassion mind state is actually, that's when our consciousness is most powerfully affecting the global psyche or the global consciousness. So that really bodes well for the future of the planet. And then what they did, I was mentioning the DNA. There's a study, and all this is in my book. All this research is in my book. But they did a study, and they looked at people's DNA expression. And what they did was they had them perform selfish hedonistic pleasures, and they looked at their DNA, and then they had them perform altruistic pleasures, where you're serving the public good, but you don't expect any response from it. And they both described similar highs. They both, had kind of an uplifting experience from it, whether it was selfish or whether it was altruistic. But the DNA knew the difference. And when they were involved in altruistic pleasures, where they were helping the greater good for no personal gain, their DNA expressed itself more healthfully. There was less inflammation. When they got their high from selfish pleasures, their DNA had more inflammation. It degraded. And, and what's fascinating about this stuff is this is the stuff that's been passed down through the ages. It's like every major religion. I'm not talking about organized religion. They all get corrupted and bent and twisted. But the original prophets of all these religions had very similar ideas, and it was compassion. Compassion was at the core of everything. And all the major religions, they said that when you're serving others, that's when you're the happiest. But what science is now showing us is not only is that when you're the happiest, but it's when your DNA is expressing in the most healthful way. So everything, when you look at the science, and I have this all through my book, and it's all cited, so you can go to the original science. But what it shows again and again is that compassion is woven into the fabric of the universe, and we get lost. Now, what I would suggest is, and I could be wrong, about you, but I know from my own life, when I was very young, and I see it with my grandchildren as well, man, very young children, they're really loving. I mean, they're really kind people. It's like they don't want to hurt people. But then we start, and especially like with me, when the testosterone kicked in, when I started, reaching puberty, that's when all my demons, that's when all my, kind of, young, angry, selfish kind of stuff happens, and then, like you say, you start to get older, and then what happens is the Chinese say that you return to childlikeness as you get older, because then you remember, what
and I'm not a big religion guy, but I read a book, John Eldridge, Way of the Wild Heart, and the different stages that a male goes through, and his wife wrote one for the females. And but we're born playing cowboys and Indians and cops and robbers and axes versus allies and it's all these competitive good versus evil adventure stories.
Yeah.
And so most guys, we grow up with that sort of thing, and then after a while, after we get some experience and everything, we grow a little bit wiser. We read some books and talking, connecting to what you guys were saying earlier, about Syria and some of the false flags and everything. I just love hearing more people talk about this, because that information needs to get out. And I read Stephen Kinsler's The Brothers, about the Dulles brothers and all the covert wars that they did, and then John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and all we need to do is realize America has 1,000 bases military bases throughout the world.
Yeah.
China has 1.
Right.
Russia has 2, and I think they're both in Syria.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah. They are not the imperialist demons of the world.
Yeah.
We need to look in the mirror to see who the enemy is, who the problem is.
Yeah, you mentioned you're not much of a religious guy, and I'm not either, really, organized religion. I mean, when I was a kid, I went to Sunday school, Bible school, all that stuff, so I really do know a lot about the Bible, even though I didn't, when I became a teenager, they couldn't answer my questions, so that's when I, drifted off. Well, I was too busy partying for a few years, but then later I started, searching through mind body stuff. But the thing that, it's like, then when I got older, it was like I started looking at every religion, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, everything. And what you find when you go through these books is you find these really beautiful pearls of wisdom, and then you find a lot of stuff that just doesn't make any sense at all, or at least it didn't to me.
It's perverted.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Sometimes perverted as well, but you get those little glimmers of wisdom. And one of the wisest things that I've ever read or heard was make sure you get that telephone pole out of your eye before you bitch about the speck in the other guy's eye. You know what I mean? And my God, there's certainly a lot of that going on.
Man, it's so much easier to work on somebody else. Yeah. It's so much easier to focus on somebody else's problems than your own, man. It is.
That's right. Yeah, and so that's what our foreign policy does. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I find myself saying this all the time. We need to spread more love and less hate.
Yeah.
And I had a kid the other day walking by. I guess he was walking his girlfriend to her home, or a female friend. And I was like, who is that? You parked over there behind me. And I started looking a little bit. And he looked at me, what you looking at? And I'm like, dude, oh my God. And so I said, hey, listen, I don't know who you are, good thing left. I'm sorry, my bad. I said, listen, do you need more hate in this world, or do you need more compassion and love? And this is my older self talking, because my younger self walked over there and probably something in the nose. But we do. We need more love, and we need to share more information and more knowledge, because our school system, our government, our media has kept us dumbed down for so long and indoctrinated that we need to undo so much.
And we can.
My friend. Have a great night, Michael. We'll talk to you again in the future.
All right, take care, guys.
All right, bye-bye.
Have a good one.
You know, it's one of those things, talking about the duality of things, cops and robbers, cowboys and Indians, good and evil. Then you remember, you brought up the Tao Te Ching.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in that philosophy, there isn't a light and a dark,
mm-hmm.
right? There's a way, mm-hmm. which is what I understand the Tao means.
Yeah.
There's the way,
mm-hmm.
and then there's not the way.
Mm-hmm.
You can either follow, so there's a million ways to not do it,
mm-hmm.
and there's really only one way to do it. And maybe that's a simplification of things.
Yeah, well, it's kind of tuning into that internal flow. And you can feel when things are flowing.
Right? No, absolutely. Well, Bill, we appreciate you coming down. Tell us again, how can people find your book?
Yes, if you go on Google and Google New Second Edition, The Gospel of Science, William Douglas.
You got an email address you want to share with people?
Yeah, Bill Douglas at worldtaichiday.org. Bill Douglas at worldtaichiday.org. You can also go to smarttaichi.com. That's where I have all my mind-body stuff. And then you can go to the Global Transformation Project and sign our petition for a UN resolution for mind-body education and public education.
Thanks for coming down, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. This was awesome.
We'll be back next week for more Paragon Radio.
We are not solid and impenetrable mass, but we are open and permeable. So the chi, or life energy, can flow through us just as easily as it flows through the air around us. In fact, the only thing that can limit the flow of chi is a thought limitation. So when I invoke the image of a soothing flow of light or relaxing energy flowing down through your head and brain and face, you may think to yourself, this skull is solid mass, so that energy can't flow through it. Then your tiny cranial muscles will tighten up a little bit, and you will limit the flow of energy and its healing benefits. Therefore, just sit back and enjoy the following sitting Qigong exercise without worrying about how to do it, because the Qi will flow through you easily and effortlessly just by your willingness to let go. As we begin this exercise, I will use the term light when referring to the Qi, or life energy. This concept connotes permeability, like when sitting outside on a nice fall day and the warm sun seems to flow right through your skin and sink right into your bones. So this doesn't necessarily mean an optical light, but more of a soothing silken energy that may feel light and airy. Begin with your feet flat on the floor and your hands palm down, comfortable on your lap. Let your eyes close easily and naturally. Notice how your lungs fill and empty, becoming aware of your breath. Notice how the bottom of the lungs fills as the abdomen slightly expands, and then fill the lungs to the top as the chest expands out slightly. As you release the breath, observe how the upper chest relaxes in, and then the abdominal wall relaxes in as the lungs completely and effortlessly expel. This full diaphragmatic breathing is used in Tai Chi as well as the sitting Qigong exercises. When releasing the breath, think of allowing all the muscles to let go through the head, face, neck, and shoulders, chest, and back. Allow the shoulders to drop, relaxing away from the neck. As we breathe and let go, notice how the breaths become not only deeper, but at the same time more and more effortless, almost as if the breath were beginning to breathe us. In breathing and releasing, the body begins to expand open as if the very atoms were expanding away from one another, which they actually are. It's just the opposite of when we get tense or tight. We get smaller and a little bit shorter. As we breathe and open, the atoms actually expand away from one another. It's as if the wind could blow right through you. Don't feel as though you have to sit perfectly still through this exercise. Yawn as often as you like, and if you need to fidget or scratch an itch, then do so. However, keep your eyes closed because we will go through layers of awareness, and each time you open your eyes, it will take you back a bit. Again, take nice full breaths and let the whole body relax the breaths out, as if the bones themselves could let go. Now think of the sun directly above your head, and just by thinking of it, you may experience a subtle lift or a lightening throughout your body, as if we rise to a higher, more subtle vibratory rate of this silken lighted awareness. Let go of trying to feel or make. Just sit back, breathe, and let go, observing effortless responses. Now think of the sun above the head opening and releasing a shower of clear silken light pouring over your head, torso, arms, legs, through your feet, and right down into the earth below. Once you think the thought, let go of it. Let all your cranial muscles let go and simply enjoy the experience of release as you are washed through by this cleansing light. Be aware of it expanding through the muscles in the top of the head. As they fill with lightness, they begin to relax and release their grip on the skull, expanding down through the sides and the back of the head until the entire scalp is lighted. Every follicle filled with light, flowing out through every hair on the head until the root of every hair is floating in a pool of liquid effortlessness. Experience as the scalp relaxes on the skull and the light permeates. And now expanding down into the back of the head, into those muscle groups at the base of the skull. As those muscles fill with light, they begin to release their grip on the bones in the back of the neck and the shoulders and the upper back, up through the back and sides of the head. The hinges of the jaw begin to light as the deep skeletal muscles let go. Now over the forehead, across the brow, and down the bridge of the nose. Not trying to feel or make anything happen, but sitting back and effortlessly observing as the soothing energy expands into the left eye socket. And now into the right eye socket. All the tiny optical muscles letting go and floating effortlessly in the expanding radiance. The nose, cheeks, mouth, and lips open to the lightness as it flows up through the nose into the deepest recesses of the sinus cavities, where you can experience an effortless release as the sinuses fill with light. Now the ears and the sides of the head, the tiny bones and muscles of the inner ears releasing as the light permeates, allowing the eustachian tubes to open, energy flowing down into the mouth. As the mouth fills with light, the upper palate, gums, and even the teeth seem to light. The tongue and the lower jaw, the gums and teeth from one side all the way around to the other. Now any saliva gathered in your mouth, swallow it and experience the energy moving down through the neck and throat to expand throughout the chest. The heart itself begins to illuminate. Again, if you catch yourself trying to make or feel something happen, let all that go. Sit back and be willing to feel absolutely nothing as you passively observe the lightness expanding through the heart and chest, lighting all the fibrous tissue of the lungs. Every breath we breathe in breathes lighted oxygen, carried with every beat of the heart to all the extremities. In fact, every cell is lighted as it's carried through all the liquid systems of the body, leaving every cell radiant with a silken effortlessness. Expanding now through all the organs, lighting the stomach, the liver, spleen and intestinal tract, down through the kidneys and the lower back. Now think of the sun above your head for a moment, opening and releasing an even greater flow of light, pouring over and through you into the earth. Again, once you think the thought, let go of it, and then open to an experience of expanded release as the bones themselves open to a cleansing shower. As the skull is permeated, the light expands into the billions of brain cells, lighting the left frontal lobe of the brain, and then the right. Expanding through the midbrain and temporal lobes, and on into the brain stem or the old brain in the back. It's as if the brain were a muscle that we've clenched for a long, long time. And as we let go and allow the light to permeate the cells, it's as if that muscle is finally letting go, opening and lighting. Effortless and soothing, releasing any straining thoughts into the silken, cleansing expanse of lightness. Now allow the energy to flow down the spine throughout the entire nervous system, to the furthest dendrites in the skin. Release any nervous tension in the frayed nerve endings into the cleansing effortlessness of that expanding light. As it expands around to the solar plexus and the nerve bundle there, the highest concentration of nerves outside of the brain itself, so any of the nervous tension that we hold in the abdominal or stomach area can be released into this expanding lightness. As it moves down to the very tip of the tailbone where it radiates out, filling the pelvic bowl, legs, feet, and pouring right on down through the open feet into the cleansing earth. So this is a very effortless process as we allow the light to pour over us from above and allow the earth to draw any loads right out through our open feet in its gentle pull of gravity. All we need to do is simply breathe, open, and be willing to let go. As we allow this cleansing shower to pour through us, you may become aware of blocks in the flow. These blocks can manifest themselves in many forms, such as muscle tension, tightness, aches, angst, or feelings of anxiety. Basically, any form of discomfort or dis-ease is a signal of blocked energy. Therefore, you don't want to try not to feel these blocks or repress them in any way. Actually, let yourself be right in the center of those feelings. Feel how they feel and where you feel them. Then, with the next deep releasing exhale, think of letting the light expand right in the center of the block, and then just sit back to experience as it begins to effortlessly open and release its loads into the cleansing shower of light pouring through us. With each deep releasing breath, the mind, body, and heart can let go at even deeper levels. Yes, the heart is a muscle, and as you relax out a sigh or yawn, the heart can begin to let go of emotions you may have repressed or held onto. Think of the brain, mind, and cranial muscles letting go as you release the breath. As we allow the heart and the brain to open and let go, the cleansing shower can begin to wash loads we've squeezed in the mind and heart. We can begin to let go of fears, tensions, and worries that we've squeezed in the tissue. As always, the more you let go, the more you can let go. Think of the downpour from above intensifying 10 times over, and then sit back and observe the responses. Let the feet open even more for elimination. Release any remaining loads into the cleansing shower. Now think of the feet closing, and instantly that happens. Immediately you may begin to experience the sensation on the soles of the feet, as a silken cocoon of energy backfills up and over the feet, ankles, calves, thighs, hips, hands, arms, torso, shoulder, neck, and head, until it overspills over the top of your head as the body is saturated with light. As the light continues to flow over and through the body, think of the hands opening. Just by thinking the thought, it happens with no effort, and immediately light begins to pour out through your hands and fingers. With eyes still closed, slowly lift your hands up in front of you as if you were holding a giant beach ball in between them. So your hands are about 3 or 4 feet apart, palm facing palm, as if you were about to clap. Take a couple of deep cleansing breaths and allow the entire body to relax. Even though the hands are still raised, let every muscle in the upper body just let go. Now, with eyes still closed, slowly move your hands in towards one another. Open them to the experience of the energy we've begun to gather, throughout and around ourselves, but also between our hands as well. Move the hands in until they're almost touching, but not quite. Let yourself get a sense of the feeling, and then slowly move them back apart, feeling the difference as they move away from one another, until again they're 3 or 4 feet apart. Take a couple of deep breaths, again letting go of the muscles. Again, slowly move the hands in towards one another. opening them to the sensation of energy until they're almost touching. As you slowly move them apart again, notice the difference in sensation as they move away from one another. Before we do this one last time, take a couple of deep cleansing breaths to again let the entire body relax. The more we relax, the more easily this river of energy pours through our body and arms and out through our open hands. It's a letting experience. We don't have to try. Now one last time, very, very slowly, move the hands in until they're almost touching. Experience. As you slowly move them apart again, experience the difference and gently place them back down on your legs. Now let all that go. With each releasing breath, allow yourself to relax a bit more into your chair with each exhale. By letting all that go, we can now touch back into the shower of light pouring over us from above. As we're saturated with light, it overspills over the top of the head, filling the field around us, until very quickly it seems as though we were literally floating in an ocean of expanding lightness. With each releasing breath, you can allow yourself to expand with this light, and in doing so, continue to release loads and tensions that you may have squeezed in your mind or your body. These loads are effortlessly drawn out magnetically in all directions, like ethereal iron filings being drawn outward from the deepest part of your mind and body, lifted and cleansed as you breathe and let go. You can literally feel loads and burdens beginning to be lifted up and off your shoulders. Again, just by breathing and being willing to let go. Worries and concerns are now lifted off the brow and the temples and seemingly right up out of the brain itself. The deep facial muscles begin to release tensions they've held on to. Now the heart can begin to release any heaviness or angst it's held on to. With each releasing breath, allowing the heart to open even more. Allowing the deepest part of the heart to open, the muscles within and around it, letting go. As we continue to release loads, we can begin to open to the permeant lightness expanding within and throughout us. The more we let go, the lighter we become. There's literally no limit to how much light we can assimilate, save a thought limitation. So wherever we become aware of tension or restriction or tightness in thought or feeling, with each releasing breath, we can allow the lightness to expand within that, allow ourselves to open, to become lighted, effortless. This process of release, expansion, cleansing, and lighting will continue for hours after completing this experience. In fact, the rhythm of your breath and the willingness to let go will continue this effortless release. Opening and lighting. Take a few more deep cleansing breaths as we continue to allow every cell and every aspect of the field within and around us to open, to assimilate this radiant lightness as we actually become light. Being lighted is a natural state. It's the squeezing, the tension, the fears that cuts off the flow, the assimilation, the expanse of our natural state of lightness. So as we breathe and open through these experiences, we become closer to our natural selves, our lightedness, our effortless nature. With each cleansing breath, allowing ourselves to open at deeper levels, to again assimilate light, floating in this ocean of expanding lightness. Every cell, every aspect of us in the field around us becoming radiant, healed. Now, very slowly and very gently, when you're ready, open your eyes.